Chapter. Big up.
If you want me to believe that only 11 to 12% of African American children can perform above grade level, I'm going to have a hard time believing it. The only way those numbers can be justified is if they can't figure out this test that they're taking. Because if we allow their teachers to design the test, right, and we allow the people that know them to design the test, they will most likely do better. And so we got to train teachers on how to prepare our students to take these tests. And we got to expose the students to as many test-taking strategies as we can, because we'll get into it in a second, but the reality is these tests are here to stay, whether we like them or not. Florida Department of Education, like I said, they failed to provide any specific action plans to take as far as achieving these goals. They can set the goals, but they don't have any specifics as to how we're going to get there. And so, right now what we have when we talk to teachers, we have a classroom learning setting versus a test-taking setting. And many teachers are grappling with this. They're all in the newspapers, and they got major problems with these tests. They can't explain what the tests are sometimes, but they know that their students are not performing as well as they should on these tests. And so what do we get? It's obvious when we look at it. Classroom instruction, what are we teaching? Are we teaching test-taking strategies? Are we teaching test-taking skills? No. We're teaching math, reading, science, writing, the basic skills that we learn. What do good teachers do? They design lessons to engage their students. They develop and enhance student skill sets, so we're going to identify your weaknesses, try to work with those, and we're going to let you maximize your strengths. Then we're going to develop and design lesson plans to what? To meet the individual needs of the classroom. So if I got some students who just got here, just came from Haiti or Bahamas or wherever they came from, and they're not used to writing in the standard English language, maybe we should let them use some auditory assessments. Maybe we should let them perform my math problems on the board and let them work them out rather than have them have to read a bunch of high-level English vocabulary, right? Because it naturally puts them at a disadvantage. And so that's what we have. What is the FCAT? What are standardized tests? And what are the problems with them? What they are multiple choice, true, false, bimodal tests. All of us have been exposed to some form of standardized test, whether it's SAT, GRE, GMAT, something. You've seen a standardized test. Even to get jobs now, they give you a standardized test. Right? Multiple choice, true, false. What they are not are essays, performance, short answer. What's the difference? The difference is, if you give me an essay, I can write half of it and be totally off topic. But the other half, because you gave me time to explain myself, you may start to see that I actually know what I'm talking about, even though I may have made some mistakes before, and now you can get a proper idea as to what I've learned over the course of this year and what I haven't. When we just give somebody a standardized test, a multiple choice question, it's one question, it's a snapshot, and if I can't understand this question, it don't make a difference whether I've learned this content or not. I cannot show what I've learned on the test because I don't even understand the question. And so with an essay, you give me a performance test, you give me a chance to explain and express myself in my own individual way. In standardized tests, I can't do anything on my own individual self. I got to do exactly what you present. If I can't do it, too bad. All right? And so educational professionals agree that we must evaluate and assess students using a comprehensive means, meaning use as many different forms of assessment as we can. Don't just measure them one day like we do in the FCAT. Give them multiple assessments in multiple ways, different methods. And if a child exceeds at certain types of assessments, maybe we want to use those types in order to pull that information that they've learned out of them. As I said earlier, the FCAT is not designed to pull anything from you. It's designed to test you however they want to test you. All right? And so teachers, basically what we have as teachers, we have standardized tests have become the norm. Most of us, if we've been paying attention, have seen there's a political shift to what? Base teacher salary and teacher pay on what? On the student performance levels from one day of a standardized test. And so if we're taking a test that's not designed to pull the information from my children, now, not only are my children at an inherent disadvantage, but now me as a teacher, I'm at an inherent disadvantage because All I'm worried about teaching is math and English and writing, and I think I'm doing a good job because my children can write and read and do math, but they don't know how to take the test, and so now whatever they learn is not being expressed on that test, and they look like they haven't learned when they may have very well have. And so perception is reality. Educators, we must ensure that our students are prepared to succeed on standardized tests. The reality is it's not going anywhere. Even if it's not good, we got to make sure they're prepared. And so this is what teachers are having a problem. They don't want to take from the actual teaching to spend all this time getting ready for the test, because we know preparing you for a test is not actually teaching you any skills that you can use. And so a lot of the older teachers are fighting it. Oh, I don't want to teach a standardized test because it's not teaching them anything. The young teachers, well, I'm speaking in stereotypes, but a lot of young teachers will just teach to the test the whole year, and we'll have absolute masters at test-taking strategies, but they won't know much at all as far as content. And so we got to figure out a way to bridge the gap. All right, how to prepare students for standardized test taking? We want to review the subject matter. So if I'm teaching English, I want to review grammar, sentence structure. If I'm teaching math, I want to teach children about equations and whatever we taught over the course of the curriculum. We want to review specific benchmarks that are going to be assessed. What are benchmarks? Benchmarks are, this is one of the only good things about a standardized test, they tell you the limitations on what they're going to test you on. So for example, if I'm teaching my math class and I'm spending all day teaching them 3- and 4-step equations, but they told me in the benchmark that they're only going to test them on 2-step equations, I'm not wasting the children's time because they're learning, but as far as getting them to execute their learning on a test, this is not an efficient use of my time. And so I want to make sure that I expose them to the limitation on the benchmark when we're getting prepared for the test, so they know exactly what's coming. And practice questions. We want to get as much practice questions that reflect what they will see, so that they can get used to how the test is provided, the sentence structure, the grammar that they use, all of the things that go into the test that really have not much to do with the content or the subject matter that we're testing. So here are the critical elements that I find in standardized tests, and this is all standardized tests, but specifically what we use in the public schools. What must teachers do? We must teach and infuse the 3 critical elements into the classroom lesson. The 3 elements are what? Critical thinking. Okay? I cannot succeed or maximize my ability on a standardized test unless I critically think through these questions. Okay? Logic and reasoning. They're multiple choice questions. Every teacher in the world will tell you, get rid of the ones that are obviously wrong. That's a logical way of thinking, a reasoning way of thinking. Why would I sit here and keep evaluating something I know is wrong? Let me get rid of it and give myself a better chance and increased likelihood of being successful. And last thing is vocabulary. This is the big one that nobody sees. It's the elephant in the room. But the bottom line is, you and I both know, every test has a specific set of vocabulary. If I want to be a doctor, I got to know pharmaceutical terms. I got to understand biology. I got to have an in-depth vocabulary that will make me understand and be able to comprehend the questions that I'm being asked. And in standardized tests, they use a lot of different language. The one example I always use is what? We go through questions and it'll say, instead of asking you to answer, it'll say, which answer is not correct? What happens? Many of our students, they're not paying attention, they're not critically thinking, they read through the test too fast, they don't understand the vocabulary, or they don't pay attention to it, and they pick the answer that is correct, even though they know, and we've taught them enough so that they could get the answer correct, and they have the skills they need. If you let the test tell it, they don't know. And so now they look like they don't know when really they do, but it's a matter of skills that have nothing to do with what they've been learning in the class. In the class, they're learning math, English, reading, writing. They're not learning critical thinking, logic, vocabulary. And so we got to start exposing them to those things as well as the standardized test questions. Okay? So in order to go through this, I got to explain what critical thinking is, what logic is, what vocabulary is in an example fashion. Critical thinking means, critical means crucial. Thinking means discerning judgment. What is it? It's a type of reasonable reflective thinking that is aimed at deciding what to believe or what to do. What do I mean by that? When I read through these standardized questions, just like the which answer is not correct question, I got to be very precise and very detailed when I read it, because if I'm not, I'm going to miss that big old knot, and it's going to cause me to be wrong, even though I have the skills to be right. And so I got to be very cautious and be crucial in my judgment when I'm going through these things. And so that's what we have as far as critical thinking. Logic refers to the study of modes of reasoning and use of valid reason. The example I like to use is what? If I woke up this morning, my heart must have beat. Right? Many of our children are not thinking in that manner when they get on these tests. We're not making connections that are obviously there if I just think in an if-then fashion. And so we got to get them to think about, if this happens, then what can and cannot be, because that's going to give them a better chance on these tests. And lastly, vocabulary, a set of words, like I said, this is the most important one to me, a set of words within a language that are familiar to that person. What's the key word in this sentence? Familiar. If I'm not familiar with the words that they use on this test, it does not matter if I can know all the math in the curriculum, I can know all the English in the curriculum. If I don't have knowledge and familiarity with the vocabulary that they use to assess me, I can't be successful, right? The vocabulary serves as a useful tool for communication and acquiring knowledge. We all know this. If you speak Portuguese, me and you can have plenty to talk about, but since I don't speak Portuguese, me and you are never going to be able to communicate anything, and I'm not going to be able to acquire any knowledge from you, even though we got plenty of knowledge to share between each other. And so my example is SAT words. All of us, if you've been in high school at some point, you've been exposed to some form of these so-called, quote-unquote, SAT words. One of these words that we don't use every day, but they have high meaning and depth of knowledge. They're important words. They're useful if we what? If we're familiar with them. If we're not familiar